Hey everybody, hope you all are having a good week so far. We just had the monthly close happen yesterday, so we're going to go over some of the charts whenever it comes to the monthly. But if you take a big picture perspective here and you look at uh, basically you can actually just look at this moving average here, this 50 moving average. Um, you've always bottomed below that, right? You had a wick here, you tested it here, but then you had a secondary bottom here. But ultimately, at one point in time, you fall, at least one point in time, you fall below that. So that's kind of what I would expect here. Every time you've fallen a little bit lower below it, except right here, but this is kind of a little bit of a different situation. You held it as support for the most part. This time you closed below. So I would assume that you would have some sort of closes below that before the final bottoming of the market. Now, if you look at the indicators here, you have crossed down for several months now since November, and until you kind of cross back on the monthly is whenever the bottom should already be in, and it should basically already be in. But for a heads up, like if you look at this point, right, you should know the bottom's already in. It went all the way down to 15,000 or so, and then it went to about 28. If you were to just wait and buy there, you'd be missing about 100%. So that's why you go down to lower time frames to kind of see and guess, make an educated guess on where the bottom is to where you don't miss out on that 100%. Because if we actually hit this box, you could have bought here and then you'd be back down to your buy price 4 years later. So kind of the best plan is to buy somewhere underneath this line for the most part, and then sell up here, of course, right? But just looking at the chart, um, let's see if there's something else we can judge here. Every time we've bottomed on the RSI, so this is the Bitcoin bottom, Bitcoin bottom, Bitcoin bottom. If the trend continues from this point, you'd probably make a low at least to this 40 level, probably a little bit lower if the trend continues, maybe 35 to 40 or so. Okay, so let's look at BTC on like a 3 day. We'll look at some smaller time frames. And it did not cross up, at least not yet, right? You're starting to cross down, but it's still crossed on the MACD here, so there's a chance that it continues to go sideways. It's probably going to have to make a decision sometime in April or May. So again, this is a death cross here. It's not a good sign. 50 moving under the 200, whether you're looking at a 1 day, a 3 day, a weekly chart, it's typically not a good sign. Weekly might be okay, because at least for BTC, well, let's actually look at it real quick. Yeah, see, like a weekly is most likely, I'd say it doesn't cross this time. They probably, well, I don't know, but if you look here, you had a weekly death cross and prices went up. So it's not a big deal on a weekly. On a 3 day, it's typically not a good sign. Okay, and a daily, it's not a good sign. At least for BTC, and it has been currently. So let's look at a daily, see if there's any potential for upward price movement. Not really. You did pass through the 20 line here, so you do see it go up a little bit, but you haven't crossed on the MACD, so most likely more just sideways movement. Sideways or down, I would say. Okay, let's take a look at let's look at some more monthly charts. Let's look at the Bitcoin dominance monthly chart. One thing you might be able to do, so like take a mental note of this cross here that prices were in June of 2023. If you go down to like a 2 week and you go to June, so like June was over here, right? If you backtrack and you say the 2 week crossed right here, that was literally the bottom of the market. Okay, so if you go back to monthly, you can sit there and say, well, we're starting to curve right here. Okay, so then you'd look at a smaller time frame, it was the 2 week, and then you'd say, well, the likely bottom is somewhere around this point. So typically the weekly has been a little bit more accurate for at least the 2 week. But right here, I don't know if you can see that. If you would have bought at this cross, you would have been a little bit late. You would have bought at 5,000 or so compared to 3,000. So then you'd need to look at a 1 week chart. And you start to see these lines are starting to curve. And then that's kind of how you can pick the bottom most of the time. You can have some fake outs, but that's kind of how you would judge the best time to be buying. So you look at longer time frames, and then you kind of go to the next time frame down, to kind of see where the curvature of those of the MACD is, when it's more likely to cross on different time frames, and then you place your bets and your buys that way. You can even go all the way down to a day if you want, but that's kind of how I judge it. And then I might give a 70% chance that the bottom is in, or 80% chance that the bottom is in, based on those things. I used to use the hash ribbons, and come to find out that the hash ribbons don't work anymore, unfortunately. But that's another way that you can do it. Okay, so the BTC dominance. And the 2 week is getting ready to cross to the 0 line. So I believe I talked about this before. Let's look at the monthly here. Yeah, even the monthly looks really bearish. Well, let me look at some other months here. I don't really go into higher time frames. I just kind of want to get an idea of. Yeah, I mean, even the weekly looks bearish right now. You've got a cross to the downside. You've got a cross to the downside. That might confirm. So, looks like we might end up actually breaking this. this month. Let's look at a 3-day. Which would be a little out of character for BTC or for the Bitcoin dominance. Would alts go up during that time? It would basically mean that everything would fall. And that alts would outperform Bitcoin. So like if BTC dropped 10%, alts might drop 5%. Or BTC could go up 10% and the alts go up 50%. That's basically how that should play out. It's one of those two scenarios. Because you can't have the Bitcoin dominance go down and everything go down as much as BTC. Like it just doesn't work that way. So it does, at least right now, it looks pretty bearish. It looks like we're going to break this trend line over the next month if things continue to look the way that they look now. Because this is bearish, you've got a cross to the downside. You've got that MACD cross, kind of like what happened over here. And then the monthly is just picking up momentum. Like the momentum's not getting less than here. You still have a cross down here, so that's very bearish. If I go to a 2-week, you also have a cross here, and then you're passing through the zero line. So like what happens... The only other thing, like, look what happens whenever you pass the zero line to the upside, right? You have this big move to the upside. If you pass to the downside here, you have the big move to the downside. There is a chance that it could use this as support right here over the next month and then turn back around and go back up. But currently, I'm leaning more towards this trend line break to the downside. So we'll keep an eye on that. It's something to look at. When it comes to, we can look at XRP on a monthly. Let's see what it's doing here. Or let's look at a different chart, XRP. Let's see, crypto.com. Two-week looks pretty bearish. Let's look at the monthly. Monthly still doesn't look great. Nothing really on the monthly here. So again, XRP is either going to basically bounce from where we're at here, or it's going to come back down to this trend line. And this is the points where you just don't know if it's going to bounce on support or if you're going to retest a lower level of support. And those times come into play every once in a while, and it's just kind of a guessing game at that point. And then risk allocation. Are you willing to buy here for a potential rise to this level or ride it down to this point? So that's kind of like a risk tolerance thing, right? You know, the Bitcoin dominance does look bullish. what could happen, and it would shock the whole ecosystem of cryptocurrency, and this has never happened in crypto, is that BTC drops and the Bitcoin dominance drops. A lot of these altcoins complete their fifth wave to the upside before going into a multi-year bear market, or BTC breaks down and everything else breaks down. You come back down to test this level of support before a new 5-wave impulse in the next cycle to the upside. And you would have some new pattern for XRP. That breaks out instead of, that creates a whole new pattern. And then you would have your let's just take a look. New pattern that goes way up there. And that is possible for the next cycle if it stays within this range. And that's something that we'd have to look at, right? Keep an eye on. So there's just a couple different ways that this can play out. If we look at Zcash, we'll look at the let's look at this pattern here. See, and this never completed its 5 waves either. Let's actually bring this. Okay, that's where I got that. So this never hit target. I sold this up here because of basically the indicators were showing that it was going to pull back from that point. I didn't know where it was going to pull back to exactly, but most likely a level of support, and we're currently at that support now. So if this thing's going to do another leg, it would be fairly soon. Monthly still doesn't look great, right? But you haven't passed to the downside on the MACD quite just yet. So there is a potential for that. But that's how you take targets from patterns. But again, you know, if you should see 5 waves to the upside. And right now, I don't see 5 waves, even if you go down to a lower time frame. Yeah, if it's probably going to move up again, it would probably be pretty soon. So and that would complete the target of this actual pattern. Would I bet the farm on that? No, not right now because of Bitcoin's situation. So for alts to move up again, it would be a very big outlier from the whole entire cycle. BCH. Let's see what the monthly looks like here. Still pretty bearish. Nothing really new there. Weekly looks bearish. 3-day looks okay. It looks like it might just go sideways for the most part. Again, just riding on this trend line. If we close below that trend line, probably like a week or two, it just wouldn't be the best sign for BCH. Not that it would die forever, but we haven't done that yet. So what else can I look at? ETH probably looks bearish as well. Yeah, still nothing here, guys. At least on the monthly, it could change. For example, like you were crossed down here and you had 3 huge months to the upside, so you could still see that again. Okay, there's not really a way to. The monthly isn't. It's like a lagging indicator. Whenever you look at crosses on a monthly, normally price is already doing something positive before you see any positive changes. Like the monthly crossed right here, but price is already way up here. So you don't want to base everything on a monthly chart. Like if you would have bought on the first cross on the monthly over here, you would have bought at 2,000 when you could have bought at 1,000. So it's just you don't want to go that far into time frames when you're trying to pick buys and sells. It's just like extra confirmation. You want to look at probably the 2-week most likely, and then the weekly. 2-week is kind of the sweet spot whenever it comes to like passing through the 20 line. For extra confirmation, then you would verify through the monthly. But like if you look over here, you crossed down here on the weekly, and even if you bought on that cross, you'd still be buying at 80% over before the bottom was in. Okay, you could go down to a 3-day and see what happened over that time frame, and then 3-day was more accurate of predicting the bottom here, because you would have bought somewhere around 1,000. So going back to lower time frames is just a little bit more helpful. So you could buy on every cross on a 3-day and then verify it on a 2-week cross or a 1-week cross. Be like, okay, so I think that buy was good. That's kind of how that works. Feel a little bit more confident to maybe buy on a pullback, for example. Okay, we could look at ICP. Look at the monthly here. It's pretty new, so you're probably not going to see much let's see, ICP. Let's look at the monthly on Coinbase here. Monthly's starting to curve back to the upside. Still not a whole lot there though. I mean, it's too new of a currency. This is what you see whenever you're looking at a monthly on a newer crypto. 2 week could look pretty good over the next couple of weeks. Let's see. And then the weekly does look pretty good. You've got these crosses. You haven't had that many green histogram crosses for a while. It is crossed to the downside, so you need to wait for that to cross up for a potential move to the upside. Right now, it's just basically going sideways since October. You just had this huge move up, huge volume, and then the market just took a dump here. And when that happens, when BTC decides not to do well, a lot of the altcoins just bleed out. And I don't think really anything has moved up. Since that happened. Let's take a look at USDC dominance. See what this looks like. Let's look at monthly. And for the longer term, this looks bullish. Now you can't really stay up here flatline for forever, so you might have a little bit of a pullback here, right? But longer term, it looks pretty good so far. This is where everybody runs out of altcoins and into a stable coin, but it looks like it's kind of starting to run into some trouble on a monthly, and this chart's just not super helpful right now. We might get rejected and fall down to this level of support before moving back up again. So we'll take a look at that. That's really all I have for today. Hopefully that teaching was good for people that missed me talking about that. When I talked about indicators, I can't remember the last time I talked about time frames and indicators, but that works on all stocks. Just look at past history, what happened when those crosses happen, and that's how you can kind of place your bets on specific stocks in general. Right, there is a layer of risk, and things don't always play out the way that they've played out before, but you have a higher percentage if you go by that rule. So I hope you guys have a good week. I know crypto is just being pretty boring right now. I'm gonna be in this market. I'm not planning on getting out of this market, as tired as I am of being in bear markets and watching my portfolio go down. I think we're in the right place, and the world is basically turning into a lot of AI is basically going to take over a lot of things, and crypto has a lot to do with that. Computing power and all kinds of stuff, energy, and we're going to watch how crypto changes the way that the financial system works over time, and price is going to have to follow that. I think we're mainly in the right cryptos for the most part. Some of the cryptos, most of them don't stick around, but we're in some of the larger ones, some of the ones that have more potential to change things in the financial industry and just the technology sector in general. So I think we'll be sitting pretty good. We just need to wait until this this cycle, down cycle, is over with, and we'll ride up the next one wherever that happens. If that happens in the next couple months, which again I think it's just less likely, or if it starts in sometime in October, we can start reaccumulating then. So I will talk to you guys on Sunday. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And if you ever want me to go over any kind of chart whenever it comes to stocks or metals or crypto or whatever, feel free to reach out. I'm glad to cover that stuff. So y'all have a good week, and I'll talk to y'all on Sunday.